real parents, real stories. It's the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast. It's Tim here as usual, but this isn't just any ordinary edition of the show. This is our 50th episode, which is about 49 more than we thought we'd ever manage. So we thought we'd mark the occasion by getting the entire team together to talk about the two things that unite us, namely parenting and blogging. So this week I'm going to be putting the same set of questions to each member of the team. Amy, Hannah, Hayley, John, Mark, Simon and Vicky. So with all 8 of us chipping in, we've got a lot to get through. So without further preamble, let's just launch straight in, shall we? I'm going to chat with the team in 2s and 3s. So to start with, let's say hello to our most recent addition, John from Dad You Geek, and 2 of our founding members, Hannah from Budding Smiles, who appeared on our very first episode in February 2016, and Amy from Finding Our Feet, or currently on a break from blogging, who debuted in episode 2. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hey!
Good evening.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, the one thing that unites us all is that we're both parents and bloggers. So, Hannah, what's the best thing about being a blogger for you?
I love the fact that I've got an outlet for writing now. I've always loved writing. In fact, bizarrely, someone who I used to go to primary school with sent me an Instagram message the other day saying she'd found a note in her diary about me having written a very good poem in year 6. So I love that I've got an outlet for that and all the amazing friends that I've made through the blog as well.
Excellent. And John, how about you?
A couple of things. I get the writing outlet, but also the experiences I've got to experience, if that makes sense, and go on, and events that I've got to attend, which has been brilliant. And most importantly for me is the people. There's some wonderful people out there. Yeah, it's the people are just fantastic in this community.
You definitely make a lot of good friends who you would otherwise never really have the opportunity to come into contact with, wouldn't you? And as you say, some of the experiences you either wouldn't do or you couldn't do without blogging. So that's definitely a big plus, I think, for many of us. I mean, Amy, as we discussed on our most recent episode, you've recently put your blog on hiatus, but what has been the best thing about blogging for you?
God, there's actually loads of different things. Trying to pick one is difficult. So I enjoy writing, I always have done, and I enjoy shaping a piece of content, figuring out what's going to make somebody read to the end, or not click away, click onto another piece of content I've written. It's that challenge, and that's what I really thrive on. It's also the feedback that I get, whether that's that they click onto another piece of content or actually leaving a comment or tweeting me or whatever it is. I've always been incredibly externally motivated person, and I do enjoy that feedback. And that's a bit maybe not very humble, but at least it's honest, I suppose. But in the last year, also really, really worked on my photography on the blog, and Instagram kind of became my happy place. And especially now I'm not really blogging, Instagram is the main outlet I've got. So that's kind of what I'm enjoying the most at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely makes you extend your skills, doesn't it? Whether it's your writing skills or learning about stuff like SEO or, as you say, photography and so on. It really makes you stretch in different directions, doesn't it? And that's part of the fun of blogging, isn't it? You're always trying something new and different or trying to improve yourself.
But, the people are great too.
Good caveat.
Well rescued. Now, it's taken us a little over a year to get to episode 50, so assuming we're still going by then, it should take us just over another year to get to episode 100. So what's the one thing you would like to have achieved or seen as a parent by then? So, John, let's start with you.
Tough question. One thing that is really getting to me at the minute is fitness. The busier I'm with work, the less time I'll have to do any kind of fitness. So I really want to knuckle down and build that into my week, really. And I've pre-warned the family that I'm going to commit to this and don't let me come off the rails this time. It's that and finish decorating the house. We moved in October and blitzed the bedrooms and the living room. but the hallway it's the first thing that greets me when I get home, and I hate DIY, but I know it needs to get done. So I've got a year, I guess. I'll put it out there now, especially for the wife to hold me to, that I will get that hallway decorated.
There you go. It's now on the record. There is no going back. Hey, Amy, how about you?
I don't know, in truth. In terms of parenting goals, I think little miss is going to start school in September, so I suppose we're aiming for a very smooth, very successful transition. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know parenting wise. I think the other half would like me to kind of have a similar goal in the fitness regime, but I don't see it happening, so I'm not going to try and lie my way through that one.
And finally, Hannah, how about you?
Well, Toby will be going up to preschool next week, in fact, which I'm completely unprepared for. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him thriving and learning so much more. He's just so intense and he just loves learning. So I'm really excited to develop that. I'm hoping not to be too much of a blubbering wreck 3 weeks today when Martha turns 1. I'm in complete denial about that. So if I can get through the day without ruining my mascara too badly, then I'll be happy. And I also have my first half marathon to run in October, raising money for Mama Academy. And to date, I have done exactly 0 training for it. So surviving that would be a useful goal for the year as well.
There's a common theme here, isn't there, in terms of our current state of fitness and our fitness goals? and I would be no different. We just talked about what our goals are as parents, but what's the one thing you would like to achieve as a blogger over the next year? Now, Amy, if we start with you, obviously you're currently a non-blogger, but yeah, any thoughts in terms of what you might look to achieve?
I'm not sure I like being called non-blogger. It feels a bit alien. I'm sort of in a pending status at the moment. Obviously, as we've said twice now, the blog is on hiatus. I started a new role as an editor in January. So I kind of feel like my blogging goals have actually been achieved in certain ways. You know, part of the reason I kept the blog going as long as I did was because I was unemployed while I was on mat leave. And it was a way of keeping everything ticking over. The opportunities I've had through that for freelance writing, it's all worked towards this job I'm in now. And so I don't really know what the next phase will be for me with that and what I'd be looking to achieve. I kind of need to go away and think about what I'm looking to do, and I suppose a bit of clarity on whether or not I'm going to go back to blogging would be good. Maybe that's my goal.
How about you, Hannah?
I'm really content with my blog at the moment. It's just sort of ticking along. It's not necessarily my main focus because I've got apples and pips, and obviously the kids are taking up a lot of my time. But I think for me, I'd love to just carry on loving it. I fell out of love with it a couple of times over the last couple of years, and it was when I put too much pressure on myself to fit a certain mold or to make money from it and things like that. So I'm really happy just not having that pressure. I would absolutely love for it to lead towards paid writing work, maybe for other publications. I would really, really love to do some regular features for other publications, and that'd be wonderful. But to be honest, I'm just happy with it being a representation of me and my family rather than any kind of big, I don't know, bid for stardom or something, because I'm really, really not built for stardom.
That's a lovely place to be, though, at the moment, isn't it? Where you're happy and you're comfortable with where you are, and you're achieving everything that you want to in terms of where you are with the blog. So, John, how about you?
For me, it's got to be to post more regularly on the blog. I've really, similar to Amy, I've really fallen in love with Instagram over the last 12 months, and that's really a big growth area for me at the moment, and it's been growing organically really well, and I want that to continue. And my photography's gone to the next stage personally, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. So there's potentially a change in focus for the blog as the kids are getting older. They're less and less interested in being involved in the blog, as you'd expect. They want to keep a bit more back from the world. So I think post more regularly, potentially maybe more on the geek side and tech I'm using Although my most recent one was a soppy letter to my 21-year-old daughter now, which was
I saw that. That was lovely.
it hit a goal really. Everyone in the family that read it cried. So yeah, it was job done as far as I was concerned. So yeah, that's it. Post more regularly would be my one thing, I guess. There you go.
So moving forward, it might be a little bit less Dad You Geek and a bit more Geek You Dad. Finally, tell us who your favourite blogger, parenting or otherwise, is, and what it is about them that sets them apart. So Hannah, let's kick off with you.
I really struggled with this because there's just so many amazing writers out there. And for me, obviously lots of people have blogs and that's wonderful and everyone's got their little space. But I'm hoping I'm going to make you blush here, Tim, because you are definitely one of my absolute favourites. I love your writing. I think it's spectacular. Lee is also absolutely amazing, who set up Headspace Perspective, and she's now moved forward with that. Her writing's absolutely wonderful as well, and the awareness that she's raised in the name of her son Hugo is just incredible. And also Lucy from Mrs. H's Favourite Things. She's just such an inspiring person. Her writing again is wonderful, and she has battled with mental health issues, but she's so positive and she's so inspiring and she's so honest. And finally, just going to sneak another one in because I can't stick with one, or apparently three. Amber at Meet the Wilds, her photography, her writing, just everything. That blog is just pure perfection, and Amber's one of the most incredible, wacky, wonderful people. So there we go. That's 4, but
I am blushing, and the check's in the post. John, how about you? What's your selection?
I was a bit more regimented and really tried to think the blogs that I've been returning to recently. And again, coming back to Instagram, 2 bloggers that I recall speaking to on Instagram first, or interacting with. The first one's Unlikely Dad, which I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of weeks ago, Tom. So he's blogging at Unlikely Dad. His Instagram posts are brilliant, and I highly recommend you go and check him out. He's got a son at 3, and he's a gay dad, and sharing their world really, and it's brilliant. His writing's very, I'd like to say, very similar to mine. It's real and from the heart, if that makes sense. And the other one for me, I tried to be equal, so one dad blog, one mum blog. And the other one is Pearl from Miraculous Mums. I don't know if any of you guys follow that blog or know her through Instagram, but her blog posts are brilliant. And it's I think mums get a rougher deal in terms of the perspective that they get from friends or family or the outside world. And it's good just to see a blog that's really shouting for some mums out there and doing some great interviews. I know the Honest Mums interviewed on there recently. I've really enjoyed reading that blog from a male perspective, let alone from a female perspective. And it's some funny posts along with some really heartfelt posts as well.
2 very equitable choices there. And finally, Amy, how about you?
I second Amber at Meet the Wilds. She is fabulous in every way. And mine have a bit more of an Instagram focus as well, probably because at the moment that's where I'm spending more of my time. But one who I followed even before I was a blogger, her daughter's about 6 months older than me, is Alice, then my daughter, Alice of Alice and Amelia. And her Instagram is at New Young Mum. And they live just on the outskirts of Bournemouth, so the Instagram feed is all beachy and sunshine, and it's just lovely. And her little girl has such a great personality that really shines through, and it's just a really happy Instagram feed, and it just makes me smile every time. And her photography over the last 3 years has really just come on leaps and bounds.
So much blue sky in that Instagram feed. It makes me feel jealous.
I know. But if you take the time to scroll all the way back to the beginning, I mean, you can literally see the work she's put in to become as good a photographer as she is. So that's lovely. And then also Louise at Squished Blueberries is really lovely writer. Actually, really love her blog, but she's like me, that it's a hobby rather than a kind of career. So she's not necessarily someone who posts 5 times a week. But she has 3 under 5s. She homeschools all 3 of them. I mean, the woman is frankly Wonder Woman. But again, her Instagram feed is just beautiful. And they're just really natural photos of the 3 kids doing whatever they're doing that day. But she somehow manages to do it in a really pretty way. But they live in kind of the countryside, and They're always, because they're homeschooled, tramping through woods or complete mess with paint in their hair. And, you know, it's just kind of the childhood that you would want, if you know what I mean, is the photos that come through. So yeah, they're my three.
That's just a fantastically diverse set of choices that really shows just how broad a selection of writers and photographers and topics and experiences that there are in the blogging world. So if you don't follow any of those at the moment, please do so, especially me. Thank you all for your participation, not just in this episode, but for all the previous ones that you've also been a part of. So before you go, just remind our listeners where they can find you and your blog online. So Amy?
On Twitter, I am at Amy Caitlin. That's AMIECAITLIN. On Instagram, I'm at Finding Our Feet, and the blog is still there. If you would like to go and see it, it's findingourfeet.co.uk.
And Hannah?
I'm on social media as at Budding Smiles, and the blog is buddingsmiles.co.uk.
And finally, John?
Yeah, I'm on social media at Dad You Geek, and the blog, very imaginatively, is dadyougeek.co.uk.
Next up, I'm delighted to welcome back Hayley from Downside Up, an occasional member of the team when she's not busy herring all over the country. I swear she has a schedule that makes Kate and William look like layabouts. And also Vicky from Verily Victoria Vocalisers, who, like Hannah, first appeared on episode 1 way back last year. So, good evening, ladies.
Hello. Good evening, Tim.
Firstly, Hayley, your blog serves both as a valuable resource around the subject of Down syndrome and also as an outlet for you to give us a peek into your daughters' lives. So you've also in recent months branched out into Facebook Live video streaming. So what's been the best thing for you about doing the blog and also about doing the videos?
Oh my goodness, we could go on all night. I think the thing about the blog, it did start out as a place to pool resources and tips and then share little insight into our world. But it's I think the best thing for me, that the unplanned way that the blog took me, was that it became a mouthpiece for adults with Down syndrome themselves to share their voice. So that's been, I think, for me, the best part of blogging over the last 5 years has been interviewing lots of people who have Down syndrome and showcasing them on the blog. That's been the most exciting part of it. And I think I often say that the unexpected positives of blogging over the years have been that it's been really cathartic for me. Sometimes you sort of write through various emotions that you weren't even aware that you actually had, and sort of write them out. And also, overwhelmingly, the support network that I've found myself a part of. It's a really reciprocal thing. We might impart some support to others, but I definitely get much more support back from the parenting blog world in general. You guys, lots of people that don't have kids with special needs that are just that are classed as really true friends now, and they're sort of there for us. That was half of the question, wasn't it? What was the other one, Tim? Facebook Live, that was really quite accidental. I was watching a few blog friends when Facebook Live first came out. You know, actually they were sort of foodie bloggers, and I thought, oh, it's so lovely to see the smiling face of somebody that I've met once or twice at a blog conference. There they are live, and I'm seeing into their kitchen. I really enjoyed that, and without any planning, which is sort of the way I tend to work. One evening we just had our tea, and I said to Natty, okay, do you fancy doing some video? And she sat down and I just pointed the camera at her, really, and it was just very off the cuff, and straight away over 1,000 viewers. So people really liked our Facebook Lives.
And Natty's a real natural as well, and it really, seeing her on video really brings out her personality.
I guess that's it, and you can't get that across in a blog, can you? Photos are lovely, but you can't really see the wackiness of Natty unless you watch Facebook Live. And I have to say, I'm missing more nights than I'm doing now, because it does become quite tiring and you get quite tied to it. But now we're just doing it ad hoc, as and when we feel like it. But Natty often comes to me and says, oh, Mummy, Chatty Natty, let's do Chatty Natty. So we really enjoy it just as much as we enjoy watching other people's.
Vicky, how about you? What's been the best thing about blogging for you?
I think it has to be about the journey it's taken me on, really. When I first started, I just started because I wanted to put somewhere to put my poetry and just waffle a bit and share stuff about Grace. But as time has gone on, it's it sort of evolved into lots of different things. And of course, with us trying for a baby for nearly 4 years, it's become a bit more about that journey. And as a result of that, I started a vlog series, as you know, the Conception Diaries. And as a result of that, you start realising, like Hayley has, where you have people where you can start helping them. I've had numerous messages, private messages from people who haven't spoken about it, even some of them to their families, and they can associate with what I've been through, and they can talk to you as a friend and feel like they are getting something back. And I think that's been a really important part of what I've found with my blog, is that you find your own niche after time, different niches, and I'm sure it'll carry on evolving over the next 5 years again, where things will change and I'll have other things to talk about, being an older mum and being knackered all the time probably. But yeah, I just like the way it's changed as time has gone on into different things, and, you've been able to help other people.
And what you're both saying, that whole kind of that sense of community, that sense of realising that you're not alone, that sense of belonging is something that's common to many of us as bloggers, whatever niche you happen to be focusing on, or whether you have a niche at all. I think that's common for so many of us, isn't it? And it's one of the real bonuses of blogging. So often we start out for very personal reasons, because we want to chronicle a personal journey or record our family growing up, or just as a form of self-therapy. But actually it becomes so much more than that, doesn't it? Vicky, you just touched on your vlogs and your YouTube channel and the video diaries you've been keeping of your conception journey. How big a difference do you find it between blogging and vlogging? And is there one that you find easier than the other?
Whilst I was on my journey, I found the vlogging easier. I mean, I just found that I could talk to a camera like I was talking to a friend, and it felt like I was trying to help the people who were on a similar journey to me. I have to say, since I've been pregnant, I've been a bit knackered and not been able to do the videos quite as often as I would have liked, and I'll probably pick them up again once the baby's arrived. But I found that doing those, it not only is cathartic, and you can get your emotions across in a far easier, far more obvious way. Not that I always wanted to do that, but I think that again in turn helps not necessarily the same people who read your blogs, but also maybe another audience, where it reaches other people who might just sit down on YouTube channel and just look through and search, find a video which is related to, for example, infertility. And I know that actually, this is really spooky, my mum's neighbour's daughter, who I didn't really know very well, actually emailed me, discovered that my mum lived next door to her mum, and she was going through a similar thing to me. And it was only because she saw my vlogs that she knew that I was going through the same thing. I just think it not only does it help get your emotions out there, it also can target a different audience.
Definitely. So it's taken us a little over a year to get as far as episode 50, and it will take us just over another year to get to episode 100. So by that point, what's the one thing that you would have liked to have achieved or seen as a parent by then? Now, Vicky, I think we know what's at the top of your list. So why don't you give us your top 2 things that you'd like to happen?
Well, obviously the top one is obviously to have our baby and for him to join our family. It's a difficult one because I think being a parent is, again, a fairly organic thing, and you never know quite what is around the corner. But I think I'm going to find it interesting seeing how my energy levels differ to 10 years ago when I had Grace, and how she starts to then interact with having a sibling, because of course up till this point she's been an only child. And she's always wanted a sibling, but I'm interested to see how she takes to being that side of things. I mean, I had to explain the facts of life to her the other day, and it was quite an interesting conversation. So, she's fully aware of how IVF works. And I think she's also interested to see, I mean, she's always worrying that something's going to happen to me. She's gone away, she was worried about me. And then she's saying, what if the baby comes? It's in the middle of the night. What if Ross isn't here? And all these things. And I'm just trying to reassure her all the time. And then, of course, she'll have different things to talk about when her brother does arrive. And I think as a parent, what I'm interested in seeing and how that's going to evolve, and how having siblings in a family instead of just an only child is going to change things.
Yeah, lots of things that are going to change over the next year or so for you, aren't there? And it's great that Grace has been so involved in the journey so far as well. How about you, Hayley? What's the one thing that you're most hoping to achieve over the next year or so in terms of parenting and family?
Well, I think much like Victoria says, it's about transitioning to different phases of parenting, isn't it? We're constantly, just as we think we're getting it right, we know what we're doing, it all changes. So for us, Mia has just turned 13 and we now have a teenager in the house, which is a completely new set of emotions for me. She's increasingly having a bit more independence, turning into a young woman, and it's guiding her through social media and all the sort of things that we didn't have to deal with before. So it's balancing that with Natty, who has very different needs, and then we're transitioning Natty. We're looking ahead now to her moving into secondary school. So then we're going to have 2 teenagers on our hands, and it's how we deal with all of that. So I think it's a very new phase that we're entering into, and it is, as you say, constantly about family dynamics, isn't it? And who's making sure that no one has more attention than the other, and making everybody feel valued and important and included. So it's constantly a juggling act, and I'm hoping that I'm going to learn how to do that over the next year.
Yeah, I'm a little bit behind you, but it already feels like we have a 9-year-old teenager in the house. So it's when he does actually become a teen, God only knows what's going to happen.
It starts early, Tim. It starts early.
What about in terms of the blog, Hayley? Do you have any particular objective or ambition for that over the next year, or are you just going to see where it takes you?
Do you know, I always call myself an accidental blogger. I still don't know what I'm doing 5 years on. It looks a bit messy. I'm not very technical. I keep promising myself that I'll get somebody that actually knows what they're doing to help me sort of sort it out and make it look a bit nicer. But maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just bumble on. I think I've reached a place actually in the last year or so where I feel at peace with my blog, which sounds a really funny thing to say, doesn't it? But I don't feel I have to keep going to it and looking and checking it, making sure it's okay. It sort of sits there now. And I think for me, the blog is sort of now the hub of other writing. It's sort of the hub that sits in the middle, and other writing has come from it. And I think that's what I'd like to see continue, sort of writing for other publications and perhaps producing another book. So, but just gently fond of my blog and allowing it to tick on. I don't have any great expectations for it.
And Vicky, what about you? Any particular blogging achievement that you'd like to tick off in the next year or so?
It's interesting, actually, because I have a similar attitude towards my blog these days as Hayley does, and I think that comes with time. My blog is 5 years old in September, and I think you get to a stage where you feel settled and you don't feel like there's this great big need to compete or be something. But on what I do enjoy is the helping side of things, where people have come to me. So what I want to try and do over this year is just help people understand that the choices that they can make about IVF and where to go. I've had people come and ask me for advice, so that's nice. And the other thing is just to continue evolving with my photography, which I really enjoy. It's probably my favourite pastime. If I want to relax, that's what I do now. I go for a walk with my camera. And that's something I love. And if I can share that, that's great. And if it transitions into something else, that's great too. But if it doesn't, it's no great big deal for me. I just want to enjoy it. And like Hayley, she writes for other publications. I've found that it's gone into social media management for other companies. So it's opened other doors for me, which I never expected. And it's given me a different career path, which again, I didn't expect, especially at this age.
And it's something I think probably the three of us particularly have in common, in that each of us is quite mature in terms of blogging years. There is definitely a point at which it's almost like the pressure suddenly switches off and you can just relax. And as you say, Vicky, it's not you worry less about the competition and wanting to achieve higher rankings, better stats and all this, and actually you start to enjoy writing for the purpose of either for the joy of writing or because you have a particular objective in mind, whether it's around sharing your experience with a child with Down syndrome, or whether it's about helping and supporting other people on IVF journeys, or whatever it is, and your objectives change and your attitude definitely mellows, I think. And I mean, that's something I've certainly found as well.
Yeah, that's true. It's so easy to get sucked into that initially, isn't it? That competitive side of things. But it's so great to step back and actually remember. For me, several points along the journey, I've had to remind myself of my original motivation, which was to create a better early experience for new parents. And actually, as Victoria said, that's exactly, if you're helping one other person, then your blog is a success. And as a spin-off from Downside Up, I've now been asked to work with obstetrician students at Oxford University. I'm working with them on the language they use around antenatal screening and diagnosis of Down syndrome. So that's where it's at, really, isn't it? It's a bigger picture. It's stepping back, really, isn't it? And looking at a blog as one part of the bigger picture.
Let's finish off by looking outside of our small but perfectly formed podcast team. Who are your favourite bloggers and what is it about them that sets them apart? Vicky?
Oh, crikey. With me, I tend to find that it depends on my mood as to what I want to read. And there are a few people that I read fairly regularly. And then there are others that I dip in and out of. So, I'll give a few mentions to some of the people. One of them, Steph Curtis, who writes Steph Two Girls. She's got a daughter who's, remind me, Hayley, I know you'll know.
Has autism on the autistic spectrum.
She's on the autistic spectrum. And I always love reading her different, she just shares lots of different things around that subject, but other things as well. Sarah, mum of three world, she writes about her family. And I just find it really engaging. I'm not one of those people who likes to read loads and loads of reviews and things like that. I like sort of real life stories, really. Another good writer is Suzanne. She used to write Three Children in It, and she writes Inside Out and Beyond now. Then, as a result of what we've been through over the last year, I started following Jules Furness, who she vlogs a lot, and she's been going through IVF. She had egg donor treatment last year, which unfortunately didn't work, just before I went on my trip for mine. And she's going to be trying again. And she's actually got a friend who's going to be donating their eggs to her, I believe. She went and met her the other day. So I follow what she's doing. And she's also got a blog. I think it's The Girl Behind the Camera. But she mainly vlogs. So I tend to follow that. But it just, like I said, I haven't got a specific favourite. I read your blogs, Tim. I read yours, Hayley. So, I just read whatever comes up, which I think, that looks interesting, I'm going to go and read that. Rather than following one specific blogger, I tend to look at the posts and the subjects.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of blogging, isn't it? There's so many different flavours of blog, and whatever you're in the mood for, there are people who will be writing about almost any specific topic that you can think of. So how about you, Hayley? Do you have any particular favourites?
Well, and some of my favourites Victoria's just mentioned, which is great, and very much like you guys, it depends what I've got time for and what I'm in the mood for, and I don't feel that I have to go and keep regularly, but. In the special needs world, well, Steph, I read hers as well, but Just Bring the Chocolate, lovely Renata, who writes Just Bring the Chocolate. She writes beautifully. She writes about one post a year, and they're always astonishing. She writes about her son Dominic, who has an undiagnosed condition. But I tend to dip in and out of blogs that aren't from the special needs world, because sometimes I feel I've just had enough of that and I need something a bit different. So if I want a bit of a giggle, I go to Wally Mummy. If you want a poem about rude bits, then that's the one to go to. If I want to know how to make an Easter craft, I'll go to Red Ted Art, Maggie's blog. And I absolutely adore her Melness Speaks, Mel Fargo, her Melness Speaks. I read her blog. Actually, I read hers every week. She's so wise. She's wise and funny. And I think all the advice I've ever had from anyone about how to handle blogging has come from her. I love her to bits, and I also have a very soft spot for My Two Mums, and a very quirky friend who writes fermented food. I don't eat fermented food, but I love her Facebook lives and her vlogs. She's wacky and funny and bright, and she lifts me if I'm having a down day. So I think, yes, it's what you're in the mood for and what you need, and it's about balancing your life out with snippets into other people's worlds that are a little bit different sometimes, isn't it?
Can I just mention one more, if that's okay? There's a satirical writer who regularly links up to Prose for Thought, my poetry linking, and she writes over at Turning Up in Devon, and some of her satirical stories are just hilarious.
Two really interesting sets of choices that really show off how diverse the blogging world can be. In time-honoured tradition, I am going to wait until the end of the final segment before revealing who my picks are. There's nothing like a bit of suspense, is there?
Tease.
But thank you both for taking the time to speak with us tonight, and I look forward to recording episode 100 with both of you, and a few more in between, of course. But before you go, just remind our listeners where they can find you and your blog online. So, Vicky?
Okay, you can find me at Verily Victoria Vocalises. The URL is vevivos.com, and I'm on Twitter and other social media at Vic Welton.
And Hayley?
Fabulous. And we're downsideup.com. That's 2 S's in the middle. And again, we're on Twitter as Downside Up, and everything else is Downside Up.
Last but by no means least, I'm joined by one of the longest serving members of the team, Mark from Best Dad I Can Be, who first appeared back in episode 2, and one of our most recent, Simon from Man vs Pink, who joined us in January. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Evening, Tim. I hadn't realised I'd been on that long. Gold watch is in the post, I assume.
And still no sign of parole for good behaviour.
No, none at all.
As the saying goes, time waits for no man, especially not one with children, so let's launch straight in. Mark, you've been writing about your family for the longest of any of us, so what's been the best thing for you about having been a blogger for all that time?
Oh, I think it's very simple, Tim, and it's the fact that I've recorded so much of family life. The record will last, that it will be around, hopefully, after I've gone, that the children will be able to look back on it when they have children of their own, and also that now that they are older, they appreciate what I've done and are quite involved in it and will come and suggest subjects to me and are really quite big fans of the fact that they've been written about for so long, particularly Alex, who is 18 now and interestingly is in the next bedroom with his first serious girlfriend. So if there's a few noises off or I rush off, that's what's happened there. You know, he was a sweet little thing of 4 when I started writing about him, and now he's 18 and they're in the next bedroom, quote, helping each other revise for their A-levels, unquote.
Is that the current euphemism for it? So never mind Netflix and chill. Simon, you were actively talking about parenting on social media for a while before you started up the blog, which I think is just about to celebrate its 3rd birthday, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, very good. Thanks for reminding me, yes.
What's been the best part of blogging for you?
I think it was, as you kind of mentioned it, before that I was active on social media, so it's kind of an organic process of just being a parent, trying to reach out and explore new ideas, for me anyway, about gender stereotyping and female empowerment, girl empowerment. And it was great to be able to share ideas internationally with people, and it just kind of helped me grow as a parent. And it was great to sort of engage in that conversation with other parents and opinion makers and you know, campaigns I really admired, like Toys Be Toys. And that was, you know, kind of in a nutshell, it's all of that is been the best thing about blogging, just kind of engaging in the conversation and how it's informed me and my, you know, how I parent as much as the way I engage, and other people kind of read my experiences and feedback similar to the kind of things I gained when I was first kind of on this parenting journey, and just kind of bemused by everything.
You know, I guess for me it's been 2 or 3 things. I mean, the first one is exactly what you've just mentioned. It's the conversation and the engagement, and also the community and the friendships that develop. I mean, without blogging, I would never have met any of the many parent bloggers who, you know, I now call friends, and I would never have connected with the members of this team, and the diverse range of experiences and views that we have between us. The second thing, I think, as Mark mentioned, is, you know, I've captured a lot of the little things that have happened as our kids have grown up as well. You know, I've been writing about the kids and being a parent for, 8.5 years. And every now and then I look back through some of the 1,000-odd posts that I've written in that time, and I'm reminded of something small but significant that I would otherwise probably have forgotten by now. And I think there's a there's a natural tendency when you set out on this parenting journey that you will remember every little detail about your kids' early years. And Mark, I'm sure you'll testify to this as well. You really don't.
Tim, I absolutely think you've hit there on one of the most important things about blogging consistently about your children, is that because you're forced to produce content on a regular basis, you have to write about trivia. You know, when you start off, you think parenting is about the big events. You think it's about sports day and birthday parties and Christmas. And actually, it's not about the big things. Parenting is made up of a lot of small, seemingly insignificant incidents. But if you can blog about standing on a piece of Lego in the middle of the night, which we've all done, you build up a picture of your children's childhood, which you absolutely could not do in any way other than blogging.
Yeah, there's a saying, isn't there, that's about life being in the details, and parenting and childhood is exactly that, isn't it? It's as much about the small things as it is about the big milestone events, and it's those little things that are often really important.
Absolutely.
I said there were 3 things that were the best part of blogging for me, and I'm just trying to remember what the third one was. That's okay, I've just remembered it. The final thing for me, and it's something I've spoken and written about a lot in the past, is that blogging helps scratch an itch. I've always had an urge to write, which goes all the way back to my teenage years, and I'm a far better and more confident writer now than I was 10 years ago, and that in itself means an awful lot to me. So moving on, it's taken us a year and a bit to get to episode 50, so assuming we're still going by then and haven't been certified, we should reach episode 100 in the summer of next year. So what's the one thing you would like to have achieved or seen as a parent by then? Simon, any thoughts?
Well, I wouldn't say there's one thing. I think just the something I've noticed this year with my daughter is that just, you both would experience this, just that going from not being able to read to reading, and my daughter's in reception, has been the kind of the big thing this year, that she can kind of pick a book off a shelf of a certain level and read it, and then she can surprise herself at reading. I just would like her, I don't know, to be hanging out at home, and then she'll just go to a bookshelf and pick a book, just go down and read it for the pleasure of reading it, not because we've asked her to, but the simple pleasure of reading. She just to pass the time almost, she'll wander over to the bookshelf, pick a book off and sit down and read it.
Mark, how about yourself? I mean, obviously you're at the other end of the age spectrum now with 3 proper grown-up kids.
The one big thing I hope is that Alex gets his grades and gets into university to do the course he wants at the university he wants to go to. That's the big thing for me. Personally, I'd like to get the book finished, but as with all parents, you would sacrifice any of your own goals for your children's goals.
I've been racking my brains about this for ages, and I didn't really come up with anything specific, but if I can be slightly non-specific about it, what I think I'd really like to see from our 3 kids in the next year or so is for each of them to do or show us something that makes me go, wow, where the hell did that come from? Or, where did they get that from? Because it wasn't from one of us. And I've written in the past that I believe that just about the worst thing any parent can do is to try to turn our kids into, mini clones of ourselves. I mean, of course our kids will inherit some of their skills and behaviours from us, but I would love them to show us something completely unexpected that's born purely from them, their values, their preferences, and not from their mum and dad. And, that's all part of that journey, isn't it? Becoming their own person. Now, I guess that's all a bit deep, meaningful and philosophical, so let's stop doing that immediately and move on. In a similar vein to the previous question though, what's the one thing you would like to achieve as a blogger or a writer over this next year? So let's start with you, Mark, because as we've already started to talk about, family circumstances dictate that the nature of your blog is already having to change.
When Alex goes away in September, I think I can probably carry on as a parent blogger perhaps until Christmas, but the target I've set myself is to finish this calendar year. I think I can probably do 3 months of retrospective blogs, the sort of what I wish I'd known, what I've learnt, what I've got wrong, and then a very short one on what I've got right. But after that, then the nature of the blog has got to completely change. So it's a big pivotal year for me. But what you say is right, Tim. Writing scratches an itch for you, and I will have to generate weekly content as long as I'm capable, because it's just something that I need. It's the quote from Hemingway is, once writing has become, let me get this right, once writing has become your greatest pleasure and major vice, only death can stop it. And I think for some of us that might be right.
And Simon, how about you?
It's not a defined sort of achievement or thing, but it's more, I think I just like to grow as a writer and just be better at it. It's kind of, I'm more self-taught than anything. So I'm just kind of fumbling my way through it and kind of look back on posts and kind of understand what I was doing wrong and what worked. And so I just like to be better. But also as a blogger, I think I want to get the balance right between sort of, there's a lot of reviews on the site and some sponsored posts and then personal posts, and just get that balance.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of bloggers can associate with that, because it is a tricky balance to achieve and to keep getting right as as you start to grow. I guess for me, where I want to go next as a blogger, it's in many ways always quite similar to you, Mark, although I haven't got the same issue of my children coming of age and leaving the roost, as it were. But where I want to go next as a blogger is a question that's been on my mind for at least the past year and a half, 2 years. And as I've said before, I've been blogging in various guises on various topics for a good 10 years now. And while I've continually evolved, I'm probably overdue something of a reboot. We're away for 2 weeks over the summer holiday, and I'm going to use that blog free time just to mull over in my subconscious where I want to go next. So until then, I can't really say where I want to be in a year's time. I just know that it will need to be, and I want it to be, something that's more than just some minor tweaks under the hood. That probably sounds much more mysterious and dramatic than it probably will be, but there's nothing wrong with an air of intrigue, is there?
No, I think that's a valid point, Tim, that you've got to be satisfied with what you write.
Yeah, and all the way through the 10 years plus that I've been blogging, every couple of years I've reinvented myself to some degree, whether it's starting a new blog on a completely new topic or completely changing the way I do things. And it's been 2 years since the last set of major decisions I made, so we'll see where that takes me. And that change is energizing, it's exciting, it makes me kind of relearn some of the lessons that I've learned already. So it's something that I actively look forward to doing. So finally, for our last question, tell us who your favourite blogger or bloggers are. So they can be from any genre of blogging, not just parenting, but tell us who they are and what it is about them that sets them apart. Simon, let's start with you.
Well, I was going to pick a blogger. It's a lady called Melissa Atkins-Wardy, and she runs a blog and kind of a small business called Pigtail Pals and Ball Cat Buddies. She's American, and the business is selling clothing with empowering messages on it. It kind of mostly started with girl empowerment, but also kind of trying to present boys in different roles than outside of the normal kind of boyish stereotypes. And I picked her because she was kind of someone I kind of started reading before I was a blogger, and she was kind of referred to me by this lady called Peggy Orenstein, who wrote this kind of go-to text for gendered marketing stuff called Cinderella Ate My Daughter. It's quite a well-known book at the time. And yeah, anyway, she referred me to this lady, Miss Atkins-Wardy, and I've never met her, and I'm not even sure I've spoken to her, but we've become, as we talk about our digital lives, digitally speaking, she's become someone I consider a friend. And it was, more than anyone, I think she was someone that made me think I could be a blogger too. And I had something to add to the conversation of things I was reading. And, she's active now, more of a Facebook blogger, I think, than anything, dealing with issues of girl empowerment and wider issues of sexism and feminism, and just always like fascinating reading, and whether she posts her own content or other people's content, like in this age of like sort of digital noise everywhere, it's always good to have, I don't know, these curators of content that you can follow, and they'll kind of share interesting articles and the like with you. So yeah, so Melissa Atkins-Wardy, Pigtail Pals, Ball Cat Buddies, she is the blogger I would like to nominate.
Excellent. And Mark, how about you?
But both Alex and I share a real interest in politics, and I've found that as he gets older, that I can send him blog posts from the Guido Fawkes blog, and we can discuss those over the dinner table. And that's something I really enjoy doing with him. I shall miss that immensely when he goes away. I value that because of the slightly irreverent nature of the conversations I have with my son, and it's a real transition from talking to him as an equal as opposed to a father-son relationship.
It's great to have something that you can be interested in and share with your kids as well. And given the current state of political affairs, not just in the UK and around the rest of the world, there's certainly plenty of material to be discussed over the next few weeks and months, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I've saved myself till last, but between the rest of the team, I think actually we've already highlighted a lot of my favourite bloggers. And so I wanted to just single out Tony, who blogs at The Life of Tont. Yeah, he's not one of the big names, and he won't mind me saying that at all, but he is a fantastic writer in his own right. But what makes him special is how open and honest he is about some of the struggles he's encountered as a parent, as an individual. If you've never met Tony, he's a serving soldier. He's spending a lot of time overseas. He's overseas at the moment. Yeah, that creates a lot of strain on a marriage, on family that he's had to work through, as well as some of his own personal demons. And he talks about it in a really straightforward way. Everything he produces is thoughtful, it's thought-provoking, and it's unique in its style and its tone. And that, in a world where there are lots of parent bloggers churning out often very similar content in very similar ways, Tony really stands out from the crowd. So if you've never come across him, he's well worth checking out. So yeah, that's my nomination. And that, as they say, is that. So thanks to both of you for your contributions to both this 50th episode and to previous ones. Before you go, why don't you just remind our listeners where they can find you and your blog online? So, Mark?
Blog is bestdadicanbe.com, and if you want to find me on Twitter, that's at bestdadicanbe.
And Simon?
My blog is Man vs Pink. That's manvspink.com, and it's also Man vs Pink on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
And you can find me at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com and across social media as @ThatchamDad. So that's it for our 50th episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. Whether you've been with us from the very beginning or have only recently joined us, we really do value every listener and every positive comment we receive. All 2 of them. Thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad. We'll be back next week with a regular episode, but in the meantime, you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com and via a variety of podcasting apps. If you don't already, do please give us a follow on Twitter at Parents Podcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. And if you've enjoyed this or any of the previous 49 episodes, do also please visit the Meet the Parents Podcast page on iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. We really do appreciate every comment, and they help make us easier to find in the iTunes rankings. So thank you for listening, and do please join us again next time. Good night.